everybody else is.
All right.
We're live.
All right. So why don't we kick this thing off? We'll call to order, and we'll go right into Sam's OPM update.
Okay.
You there, Sam?
Yeah, this thing kicks me out constantly, so I'm gonna have to keep coming back in.
Two today, yeah.
Is your kid home to help you maybe operate the computer? You ready? Oh, Sam has left the meeting now.
I think Sam has internet connection issues at his house.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
He's here.
Yeah,
He said he was
that was
in the meeting twice.
Yeah, so you're up. You're first on the list.
He's frozen again. Yeah.
Oh, there he is again.
You could have frozen in a better position.
Really?
Do you want me to share my screen, Sam? Would that help?
Yeah, Joel, I apologize. This thing has been kicking me out a lot since we started on this Google platform. Eric, if you can share,
I can.
maybe you share the doc and I'll walk through it.
Sure, and if you get booted, I'll jump in to help you out.
Okay.
Perfect.
Can everyone see the blue beam?
We can, yes.
And Joel and Nate, I don't want to step around if you guys haven't done your introductory piece yet. So just let me know when you're ready.
We're good, man.
No, we're ready to go.
Okay, great. So I'm going to try to keep it relatively brief on the OPM report, as we have obviously a pretty big discussion item with the GMP, but we do want to walk through kind of the progress. So permitting, you'll notice that we are down to just one item, which is RIDOT. We are, probably inside the 5-yard line with these guys. There's been a lot of back and forth, even as of today, with just trying to close out the plat map. There's been constant communication between PAR and RIDOT to try to get this thing over the finish line. So we're hoping that we're going to be wrapping up soon. Again, it's not holding up any work right now, but we just want to keep it on the list until it's completely kind of off of the front burner and onto the back burner. Construction procurement process. So we're coming to the end of our, the procurement steps. So we have just 3 remaining packages under review by Gilbane. We actually reviewed the 4 packages that you see below under review by the subcommittee this morning. I'd say 3 out of those have gone back for additional questions and clarifications that Eric has been generating today with Greg Garvin and the Gilbane team. So we hope to have those kind of rolling into the wrap up of the GMP that we'll talk about in a couple minutes. I'm going to scroll to the next page, Eric. And again, just as kind of a summary of all of the, and I believe all this information went out to the committee ahead of time, so you probably have a more slightly clearer version of that you received directly from Sharon. But you can see the amount of RTAs that have been awarded, with the ones in red that are remaining to be kind of reviewed and completed by the team. Our participation on the trade cost right now is hovering around 18.68. You will see that once we get to the GMP, that as we look at it as a percent of the total Gilbane contract value, it'll get diluted by the markups and the fee and everything else that kind of goes into that. But we'll talk about it in the GMP.
Sam.
Yep.
I've just got a question as to there are
the two RTAs in the red that seem to be duplicates. Could you explain?
Yep, sure. A great question, Manny. And so we had two different versions of 27A, which is the Teldata Audiovisual and Security Systems request to award. That's because we were evaluating two different vendors, and there was a lot of due diligence done by John Jordan, who's with AI3, not to be confused with Jim Jordan, although I hear they're related, with Greg Garvin, with Bill Bryan, and with Ben Russell. So they have been doing a really exhaustive review of the different ways to kind of cater the system, both the security as well as the technology and all the other components that go into this, to make sure that we're getting both Ben and Tony the systems that they need for the project. And that's why you see those two options there, Manny. So what the team has been, what we did today was we reviewed both of those. We reviewed the differences between the two, and then we've gone back with some additional questions. We won't pick both. It'll be one of those two that we'll decide upon, and then those will get advanced through for that final RTA.
Thanks, Sam.
Yep. I just have to commend, I know Ben, Tony have been working, been putting a lot of time into this to kind of get this thing across the finish line, but also making sure that the system is something that's going to work for the district and for the building. Commissioning. Sorry.
Can I just jump in real quick? Not on that, but I just want to, just a quick update to the group on the DOT thing, so we can kind of put it to rest. The request to the DOT to not have to do that paving was denied. The DOT's justification was that because of the basically like lane sensors and all that other stuff, in addition to the utility work, that it was expansive enough that we would own that piece, as opposed to I guess if it was just utility work that was being opened up in the road. But so that was the justification. So that roughly $60,000 estimate, we do own it as per the last response. So I just wanted to kind of give that back to the team and close that chapter.
Sam, just talk about the M/WBE participation for a second.
Yeah.
I would just want to caution everybody, this 18.68, this is a fantastic number to start with, but don't run with it, because as ATPs come in throughout the project, a lot of times you can't get the subs can't get the minority participation in the change orders. So that'll trickle down as the job goes along. Sometimes it'll go up, but more than likely it'll trickle down.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Gene. When we had our oversight committee meeting last Monday, Craig was on it, myself, along with Tony Merdita from Gilbane, and we made that exact statement that this number will start to kind of dilute, for lack of a better term, as you do bring in those change orders over time. They do start to gnaw away at it. But I would say that on most projects we're hoping for 10% now, and then we see it erode, as opposed to being in the 18. And again, you'll see it step down when we look at the GMP. So I still think we're in a great place, and a lot of effort by everybody to kind of get us where we are today.
Right, and we are in a unique position because we have, my recollection, 3 or 4 contracts that are 100% M/WBE. So, if they get the ATP, then it's going to go up. So
well, and also you have a lot of prime. I mean, you have several primes that are M or WBE. So
right.
A lot of times it's a subcontractor that's supporting a prime, still getting the numbers that you need, or trying to get to the numbers. When you have the prime in that position, it's really good.
Exactly.
Not only for that contractor, but also obviously for the percentage and the participation that we're trying to get to.
Thanks, yeah.
Commissioning update, we're well underway. You can see the commissioning team has been on site, pretty much weekly as we're going through as the envelopes coming online. We had MEP commissioning kickoff the middle of last month. So Stephen Turner is, they're ever present now on the job and in coordination both with our on-site team with Eric and Mark, as well as Gilbane and the key trades that are part of all that work. Project milestones, so interior partitions, and these are kind of taken right off of the milestone schedule that's in the GMP, are going to be underway this month. MEP rough is slated to begin this month. And then we kind of jump ahead to interior finishes that are going to start in September. So it's amazing to think that we're going to go from some of the pictures we're going to see in a minute to interior finishes, but because we're working through the zones, that's allowing them to kind of take down specific sections and really start to advance those areas, to kind of maintain and keep with the schedule. And then the last on the milestones is at our last meeting, the committee did agree to scheduling a second school building committee meeting for the month of June. So that is scheduled for the 22nd. That was voted on and I think approved, and we'll talk about it when we go through the GMP, just as to the importance of that date that we want to keep so the committee can come back for the final review and approval of that document. So look ahead schedule, a little bit harder to see, although I think it's a little bit clearer than in previous versions. This is looking back 1 week and then looking ahead for the next 3. But you'll see, just by looking at kind of the matrix and not necessarily getting into the weeds, but we can, that you are populated pretty much across every single trade that's been awarded at this point. And they are either on site or they are starting to mobilize. And I think it's really telling, we had a conversation, our owner, architect, contractor meeting this morning, and Bill Hinchy, who's the general superintendent, he's the overarching soup for Gilbane, just talking about the volume of folks that are starting to come onto property, and that every single thing they're looking at from a safety standpoint, as folks are coming in, it's path of travel, it's making sure that everybody understands the other activities that are going on. And this matrix, I think, really starts to tell this tale about the amount of different trades that are out there or about to be out there as work really starts to ramp up with all of these RTAs being awarded. Can we go to the next slide, Eric? And I think, Eric, I got to credit Eric and Mark with some great photographs. This page is okay, but the next page really is some great panoramas of kind of the structure out there. Here you can see some of the underground utilities, the roofing, the halftime building adjacent to the stadium. That concrete work has been underway. And then here you really start to get, a sense of the expanse of the structure. Now, granted, these panoramas do exaggerate a little bit. But if folks have been out there, you can really start to understand and feel the scope and the magnitude of the overall building. And you guys can use these in any promotional material. It's part of the package. So budget. You'll see here that we're still reflecting the 75% CD estimate, and the reason for that is we have not yet approved the GMP. So what we will do is for next month's update, assuming that we get through approval, we would remove the top 2 lines of the 75% CD cost estimate and deducts. We would remove that target information as well, and we would be dropping in the exact number of the GMP. But again, we're keeping this here until we kind of get to that milestone of actual approval. If you look down below, though, on the encumbered line, we've added that many more RTAs in the last month. We're up to 140 million of committed dollars and about 32 million spent to date, or about 17% of the total project cost. And again, this reflects last month's, but not the current invoices that the team will be reviewing tonight. So that's the general project update. Happy to answer any questions, or we can jump to the actual GMP discussion.
Hey, Sam?
Yes, sir.
Can I just ask, when we do, let's assume the GMP is accepted, this page is updated with the GMP information. Can I just ask you the first time we walk, because I think we've all gotten used to seeing these numbers. Can I just ask you the first time we do that, can we take a good walk through that sheet again, just so everybody understands how we're tracking to those numbers at that point? Okay.
Certainly, yeah. Yeah, we can walk through it kind of line by line, Nate, just to kind of tie it back to what you had seen previously.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, if the co-chairs are okay, we can jump into the GMP discussion.
Absolutely, I'm good.
So I believe the draft of the GMP went out to the building committee at the end of last week. We know it is a large document, 122 pages, I think is where it's currently standing. So if we dial back to last month's discussion, we knew there was a couple things. A large amount of information for the building committee to be processing, as well as final RTAs kind of starting, kind of reaching that final approval step in, these first 2 weeks of June. So our goal for this evening was to be the first step of two, where we would have this in its final draft form this evening, which is what you received last week, for your review discussion this evening, as well as making sure that we're capturing all those final RTAs that we went through in our update a few minutes ago, so that when we come back on the 22nd, assuming that we have all the RTAs in place and that we have satisfied all the questions of the ownership team, that we would come before the group for that final approval 2 weeks from this evening. So that's just to kind of lay out kind of process. This evening, what I'm going to walk us through is really just about 9 or 10 pages of the document, because again, we're happy to flip through every page if anybody has questions specifically, but we wanted to keep it at a high level to talk about the GMP cost summary, which is really where the meat of all the numbers are, the overall project schedule, and then the pending alternates, because we think those all play into kind of the big picture discussion. Just for a little bit of background, over the last month and a half now, we've been going through iterations of the GMP document. It started out without a lot of information in it, but we were trying to process and review as much of the kind of the pieces of it as we went through. But the OPM, the AE team, district legal, and kind of the procurement working group, which has been going through RTAs on a regular basis for the past year, have gone through and provided their comments. This document, while we attempted to address as many of those as possible, some of the comments and questions are still in process. So this does not reflect every question answered and asked, but we are working through that, as well as, we welcome and encourage comments from the building committee to make sure that this is fully vetted by this group as well. And then again, rolling up into that conclusion, hopefully in a couple weeks. Just to kind of restate, and Eric, maybe you can scroll down just so we can see the rest of the comments on this page. Maybe back up a little bit, sorry. Up to number 3, great. So this represents all RTAs to date that have been approved, along with pending bid packages. So to Mandy's point, there's in the OPM update today, there were several RTAs that were still in red. Those right now are represented in the GMP, either with the best and final information that we have with those pending, or if there's still something outstanding, then we have reverted back to the 75% estimate, because we want to make sure that if we don't have all the data in yet, that we're going to still revert back to holding those specific line items, and it's a pretty narrow band. So that's kind of what makes up the total cost summary. And then just at a high level, when we talk about the GMP cost summary, so Eric, maybe what you could do is scroll down a couple pages. And what I want to do also is, Eric, I apologize, maybe just go through the table of contents real quick, Eric, before we go to the cost summary. And I don't know if you can zoom out. But what you'll see is that the GMP is broken down into, again, 122 pages. I think there's about 13 or 14 sections. And again, the cost summary is I think what a lot of people go to, right? Everybody always goes to the number. But there are multiple sections in here that make up all the components of this. There's the owner allowances. There's several pages on assumptions and clarifications. There's the drawing list. There's the specification list. There's all the addenda that have come out since the beginning of the project, as well as all the way through to the 100% documents. There's an overall project schedule. There's site utilization and phasing. There's change orders that have been, or ATPs that have been approved to date, as well as pending changes that we had to kind of put a stop date on. So what we couldn't have is all, like the week leading up to the presentation of the GMP, we can't have all these, kind of in limbo ATPs. So we set a cutoff date of a few weeks ago so that those will all be in as projected numbers. If there's a change that even started to evolve in the last few weeks, or a change that still hadn't had real information around it from a number standpoint, those may not be included in this number. But we try to get as much of it in as possible so that all that can be included in that base number, and then anything going forward would be seen as a change. And then we have pending alternates that we'll talk about a little bit. And then we have a buyout RFI log. And then Eric, I think there's just three more sections. So the general requirements and then the field office support. So again, we're not going to go into all these this evening unless there's specific questions, but I just wanted everybody to kind of understand the scope and the magnitude of the document. So if we go to the cost summary. So just a little bit of a walk down history lane for everybody. And if you go to the physical back page or the digital back page of the OPM report, if you recall at our 75% CD estimate, we were coming in at, after all that work we did through the various phases of the design process, we were, Gilbane's estimate had us at $160.4 million to deliver the project based on the scope at 75%. We knew that with that 160 was still too high. So we introduced a series of alternates to get us down to just below the target number, which was 157.2, which is what we've been carrying in our budget to date. And those alternates really were based around the artificial turf on the front fields and the lighting on the front fields. So where do we stand today now that we have all these actual numbers in? So the summary total has us at 155,903,474. So if we think about that, that's $4.5 million below the 75% estimate. And then if we take it against the target, we're just under 1.3 million under the target number of 157.2. In addition, not only are we below budget, but we also are able to include the two key alternates. Alternate one being the synthetic fields at the front of school and sports lighting at the front of school. So, we basically hit everything we wanted to and then some, because we were able to achieve the total project scope in the 100% documents, as well as those alts that we always saw as a relief valve. And we're still seeing that we're actually below that target number. So I think that's a great credit to everybody on the building committee, the hard work of Gilbane, of AI3, and the procurement working group that has really kind of grinded through every single one of these. If I was going to single somebody out, I think Gene has probably spent more time on this than he has on projects that he did when he was working full time. So he definitely deserves kudos, along with Joel, Nate, Kathy, Craig, Tony, Steve, and everybody else been part of this process, and especially Eric on our team. So this is really, I think, very positive news for the district, as well as for the project team. We're not always at this place when we get to GMP. Like we said before, we were, what were we, 40 million over at schematic design, and to kind of get here with not a lot of erosion of your scope and your program for the project, I think is very important. You'll see in here that anything that is highlighted in yellow are those RTAs that are still outstanding. But just as a quick comparison, and I'm going to use Manny's example from before because he set me up perfectly for it. But if we look at 27A, that number in there, 3.6, call it almost $3.7 million. If we physically go look back at Eric's RTA list from the OPM report, and to Manny's point, there was two listed in there. One was at 3698 and one was at 3507. So because that, as of the time of this printing, that RTA was still undetermined, Gilbane has carried the higher number in this draft, this final draft of the GMP. So I would submit that the outstanding items in here are probably trending more to the conservative side, because again, some of these are just have not been finally executed. So we don't want to make any assumptions around that. But I think wherever they could, they were conservative in putting I'd say a higher number in. Another good example is if we scroll up to the top, Eric. So demolition abatement, and we've talked about this before. So we are in the final throes of getting to an RTA on this, but there's been repeated, clarifications, site visits, going back out to the site, making sure that we're getting this number as tight as possible because this one always has a lot of variability. So we believe we have the best in finals in now from the vendors, but right now this number represents the 75% estimate number and not any of those RTAs yet because Gilbane is still sorting through those. We feel good that we'll be at this number. The trend is telling us that we're not going to exceed the budget number, which is why the 5.602 we think is a safe and conservative piece to have in here while we go through this final step in probably the next 7 to 10 days at the most. So that's kind of the logic behind the highlighted items that are still outstanding. And you'll see that there's only a handful of those remaining. So everything in white is an awarded RTA, so those numbers are locked in and firm. If we scroll down to the bottom, you'll see all the kind of the components that are below the trade cost line. So trade costs are just over 135 million. That 16.2%, I think, is a little bit outdated, Eric, right? Based on the report.
No, that only lists executed RTAs. All these pending RTAs were listed at 0.
Got it. Okay. So assuming that we have some participation in those will come up. And then below the line, what we have is kind of all the pre-negotiated, either percentage-based markups. So things like construction contingency is about 2% on trade cost. You have the subcontractor default insurance. You have the fee, general conditions, which was a fixed number based on time, builder's risk, the bond, the CSIP. And then on the bottom line, what you see there is, if you remember back to the early parts of the project, the ed visioning work that was done by Legacy Educational Planning, Robert Hendricks, was a Gilbane cost. So we did not want that to get kind of lost in the paperwork. So it's included in this number, although it is not marked up with all the other markups. That was a direct pass through by Gilbane, and that's the actual cost there. One could argue that could sit outside of the GMP, at least from a budget standpoint. It would still go up into your soft cost number, and that's something we can evaluate. There was some questions on this regarding kind of making sure that the buildup, which is how all these percentage-based rates gets applied. Gilbane has gone back through and double-checked that, and we just need to provide that clarification back to some of the folks that asked that question before. But you'll see that we go from the 135.036, add in all those layers of markups, insurance, contingency, we get to the 155.903, and then you also see that kind of dilution down from what is the 16.2 that's shown here, and MBA participation down to 14, basically 14 flat. Just a little bit on contingency, because I know that's always a question about how contingency works in the project budget. So there's there's usually two buckets of contingency. There's contractor held contingency, which is construction contingency, and then there's owner construction contingency. So the contractor held contingency is there for the contractor. It is basically, and it was a pre-negotiated percentage rate that was in the AIA documents going way back to when we, pre-GMP, pre a lot of this buyout. That contingency is there for the builder to use, subject to approval by the owner, for a variety of items. But the biggest thing is kind of missed scope. So we buy out landscape improvements. The subcontractor counted 40 bike racks, and there's 240 bike racks. So that contingency is there for the use of the contractor to kind of cover those gaps, and it's part of their total. However, if we don't use it, it comes back to the owner. So that's kind of the beauty of that number, is that if scopes were tight and buyouts were great, then you sometimes will see that return. My counsel, and I know Dan and Eric would probably share this, is that we should assume that it's all going to be spent. We will ride that contingency hard throughout this process. And Eric, Dan, and I have been in knockdown, drag-out fights with builders before on this, and we hold it closely, even though it's technically not ours, and we defend it as best we can. But at the end of the day, we should assume that it will be spent. So that's on the contractor side. Then on the owner side, we have another, so that number here is about 2.7. We have another 2.5% on our targeted cost that is held by the owner. So that's another $3.9 million if you go to our project budget that was presented in the previous document. So that is for use by the owner, and that's for the unforeseen conditions. That's for changes in the field that, as much as everybody thinks they won't happen, they will. Unforeseen conditions happen. Now, have we absorbed a lot of those in this buyout process because we're considerably down the road with the overall project process? I would say we are. And again, it's all about how we manage that and things that can pop up. But I would say that we've got a very good, kind of two buckets, one completely controlled by the owner and the other controlled by the contractor, but approved by the owner, so that we're able to absorb kind of those blows that happen throughout the project process. And again, change orders are not a bad thing all the time. Sometimes they are, you as the owner kind of walking through the building once it's really up, and you can just really start to feel the space and saying, this is not what I expected in the auditorium, or the hallway, kind of leading to the gymnasium really does not kind of meet my expectation visually or from a scale standpoint. So those are all the kind of things that are there that, again, we watch them, we hold it closely, but it's there to provide that flexibility for the owner. And again, if you don't use it, then it comes off the bottom line of the overall project.
I could just interject real quick, Sam. You actually have three buckets, because we have X number of dollars of allowances to cover anticipated changes down the road. So we'll be using those allowances before we even touch any contingencies. Right.
And those are built into each RTA, and then as well as kind of sitting outside of that RTA process. So I don't want us to be blamed for being over conservative during our estimating process, but we know enough about how these projects proceed, and you want to make sure that you have these buckets assigned and able to kind of use strategically to help you get through the vagaries of and the ebbs and flows of the project process. So that is the schedule, or the cost summary. Maybe we can just hit the pause button there, and just any questions about the information that's in there, how that exhibit is put together, or any just kind of general questions around the cost. Be happy to answer. And I would say that we may not be able to answer everything tonight, but we want to take down your comments at least that way, and then we can get back to the group as well.
Sam, Bob Wigan.
Hey, Bob. Yes.
First of all, a comment. Great work by the team. It's phenomenal that we were able to get it down to that number. Really hard work, hard to do, and I think we all appreciate the work of the leadership committee. Question for you though. Are there any areas that you're concerned about that the GMP does not represent or may not represent everything that we want to have in there, particularly in areas that are normally the last elements of a project like FF&E and other finishes and other kinds of things that you know that we want to? Are we reducing it down to a level that you're uncomfortable with or we should be uncomfortable with?
So I think, Bob, and you bring up a couple of really good points. FF&E, I would submit, is something we still don't know about yet, right? Because that's on a separate process, and for better or worse, it always happens. It lags the the buyout of the construction process. So if you recall, that our
category that ends up being cut always at the end.
Right, and just as a quick sidebar, what I would say is some of the savings that we're realizing here, I would suggest that some of those savings are at least, maybe they're put back up into the overall contingency by the owner, but maybe they're also targeted, or maybe we backfill some of those monies into FF&E just to make sure that we feel like we've got kind of the right amount, whether it's a per student allowance that's bolstered. We did the same thing in Barrington, where when we bought out the project and it was $3 to $4 million to the good, ownership there made a decision to take some of those savings, and they actually increased their FF&E line items. Because again, Gilbane's not buying that out. That's a completely separate process that AI3 will kind of oversee. It'll go through public procurement. But if we take that out, because it is a little bit of an outlier, but I think it's a great place to kind of think about reallocation of funds. I think the demo and abatement is probably the area where we have the most exposure. Because of the fact, I would say that most of the scopes, especially when it comes to the new construction, have been, vetted as well as they can be. The scope reviews have been very detailed. The OPM team, the AE team has sat through those. Gilbane has been pretty rigorous through that process. Demolition and abatement, though, kind of opens up this a kind of a bucket of unforeseen conditions, right? Because you can only test so much. The abatement environmental specialist tried to go through and quantify everything that they saw. They have to interpolate based on field data, based on what they've seen in the market, to kind of give those quantities back out to the subcontractor community. And we've seen, as we've done additional clarifications, the whole intent of those was try to narrow that gap. But I think demo and abatement is a real area that we typically see that there is kind of scope creep or scope increase that happens out there based on material found. And I think you have that whole front of the site that we don't know exactly what those conditions are in the ground. So I would say those are the areas that probably have the most exposure to the ownership team.
Thank you.
Sam, on the $1 million for COVID related impacts, are there any controls built into that? How?
So it's great. Manny, you're teeing me up on everything tonight. It's perfect. So this is a result of a lot of conversation between, kind of the project team, the ownership team. I know there's been dialogue happening at a lot of different levels. This is an owner allowance, so it is subject to review and approval by the OPM team, and then and the A team, and then a recommendation to ownership. We know that we have increased obligations out there. The cleaning, the temperature check, the turns on, say, the porta johns, the number of cleanings that they do there. So we know there's going to be some cost, but we don't know, we can't pinpoint that. So Gilbane put this in there as a kind of a catch-all that they believe, they have some math behind it that they think, that it kind of validates it getting from today to, basically 12 plus months out to kind of the turnover of the building. But the controls to your question, Manny, are that we will review this just like we review any other allowance that's in the project contract. We would review that on a monthly basis. We're going to challenge it where we think it's appropriate. We're going to approve it where we think it's appropriate, to ensure that is that A, it's legitimate, B, that it's justified, and then and that the numbers kind of all true up when we go through that review process. But that, again, that unexpected, you could leave this out of the contract value and then just say, okay, we're going to increase the owner's contingency by that much because you'd be $1 million less. I think this provides for an efficiency of process while not removing the controls that we've had in place, since we started construction out there. So it's a balance of kind of them submitting, reviewing, Eric and Mark seeing the day-to-day activities that are happening out there, and then going through that review process.
And
Sam, I guess
that number?
I'm sorry, Manny.
Are you comfortable with that number?
I think we need to pick it apart a little bit. We asked them as part of some of the final comments that we put in to show us at least some math that gets us to us. The numbers conveniently has 6 zeros on it. So we want to see a little bit of that justification around how they got to that number. They explained it to us verbally, but we haven't seen anything in writing. And Joel, I don't know if you want to weigh in.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Gene's already laughing. Gene, I want to be brief.
You're on the clock, Joel.
Yeah. So some of us, I don't know how many here, but there was an email from the trades lawyer and the trades union president, implying that a certain school committee member, that would be me, did not want to pay for any COVID-19 related precautions, to which I responded back with clarification. I think I try to represent this body as well as the school committee in stating that we're all for supporting any needs to keep these workers safe on the job site. There's one particular item in that bucket, Manny, that specifically, if you roll it out for a 12-month duration, represents about $228,000 that I am challenging, and that is the fact that they have a medical professional that was hired specifically to be on site to take temperature checks. And Department of Health, as well as the National Trade Union guidelines for this COVID response, is to have a designee of the contractor do that. So on site, we already have a med tech as part of the project, as well as several designees from Gilbane. So I'm pushing back just to seek justification as to why we as the owner would need to use those means to achieve the goal of recording the temperatures. Again, DOH and the guidelines just basically state that the employees upon arriving should self-report and then have a temperature check taken and recorded, and then the person is led on site, which again today I've been doing in Boston for a couple of days. So that's where we're at. If the committee, once we get whatever documentation, if they do in fact bring it, is comfortable with that as a justification, then obviously I will represent the group as a whole. But for the last few weeks, I've been kind of in a firm discussions, seeking some justification on that one particular item, because I think it's a substantial amount of money and needs to be vetted and justified.
So I'd like to point out that, as Sam said, it's an allowance. And as Sam said, certainly I would expect to see a little bit more detail put into that before they come with a big fat round number like that. But I remember that the work that we've done really has been, outside of the budget, outside of setting the budget and setting the budget at multiple points throughout this process. The reason that you're looking at a number that looks favorable for us right now is because of the hard work after the budget, right? I mean, the budget is only, the cost estimate is only a piece. So as we begin to see billings come in, as we begin to see requests for expenditures against those allowance, you know, I certainly would expect our team to be giving those things a hard look, right? If one of the things that they're billing under those allowance happens to be, I don't know, 12 extra, you know, porta-johns, I think it's fair to ask the question, well, are you really using 12 or are you using 10? Because if you're using 10, we don't need to be paying for 12. And I have confidence that, you know, our OPM team is going to be asking those questions. I'm inclined to support some level of significant owner allowance. I think $1 million is probably a little heavy, but we'll see what they come back with. But again, it's important to remember, none of us has ever seen this before. None of us really can predict with certainty what's going to happen, what government regulations are going to be imposed over the next 6 months in the fall if this thing starts to make a comeback. So it's safe, and the good thing is, you know, we're in a position where we can effectively afford it. So for all those reasons, I'm inclined to support it. Again, I'd like to see that number have a little bit more behind it. And then I want us to do just like we've done with the RTAs, is science the hell out of it when they start actually billing. So.
Yeah, I'd like to support that in that I think with our checks and balances for verifying costs as they're coming through, and the fact that in the GMP they specifically state that all of these costs for COVID would be itemized out, and something that we could, you know, as long as state or federal funding was available, we could seek reimbursement for at least a portion of it. So those are some options that we have too.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Could we somehow bill it to the COVID fund? But that would be for something in the future. And as long as there are controls in place, then I can support that amount.
Yeah, well, like I said, and that's the thing, right? So as these invoices come to us, you know, then we'll have to do what we've been doing on the other RTAs and seek that justification. You know, the reimbursement thing, that was an angle that was taken to other city officials across the city without anyone ever actually reaching out and getting information from myself. But you know, my concern there is reimbursement may be a possibility. If it is, we don't know to what percentage of the money spent, and it doesn't change the fact that it's a reimbursement, which means the funds will come immediately out of the project. So that means that is something that is not going into the project today, and likely then will never make it into the project down the road either. So that's why, again, I just seeking on behalf of this group here to continue that and pushing back on that. And I know that just to give more detail, and excuse me for, I know I'm overstepping and I'm not surprising anybody, but there's documentation from Gilbane that they essentially contracted the company, I can't think of the name of the company, doesn't matter, to provide this service, this medical tech service at 20 different locations. So I suspect that maybe, you know, they're in a contract and obligated to pay that, and now are stuck because, again, every documentation that we've seen from Department of Health and from the trades through Gilbane state that that anybody designated on site can record this, can do this function. So we are not looking to decrease the protocols and precautions, just the means that we achieve the goal. And at $19,000 a month, kind of significant. So that's it. We'll keep you posted.
The other piece that I just wanted to mention that I think it's important to note, at the very beginning of the project, the school department footed the initial payout for the Bayside contract. And so we have to remember that we've got a receivable on our books for that. So at some point we need to address the funds owed back to the school department within this. It doesn't have to be now, but we just need to make sure that we get it on there. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. That's yeah, good point.
There goes that greenhouse again. Down to the
All right. Any other questions or comments on the GMP?
So if I could just touch on kind of two other components of the document, just so people understand kind of where we are. So there is a brief project schedule in the document that includes two things. It includes kind of their front end work, the bid and award, submittal coordination, and then the pull plan target dates. So kind of in the weeds on process, but what Gilbane does is as an awarded subcontractor comes into the project, they get awarded, they come in, they do what's called a pull plan, and basically they're committed to milestone dates in their contract. They do a plan with that sub to kind of pull to that date to ensure that they can achieve that. What we have asked for is a much more detailed project schedule to ensure that we understand not only what the milestone dates are, which all these milestone dates are kind of meet our overall project intent of kind of turnover in August and occupancy in September. But what we don't see is all the detail. And a great example is kind of steel. So as we've been going through kind of the possible impacts of the steel not getting down to site on time, what we lacked is kind of the detail behind each of the sequences that was coming on property, when they were doing erection, when they were doing detailing, all the kind of the components that make up that trade. So we have asked, we have required that more detailed level of information is provided for anything where the pull plan has been completed. And we're going to have to see kind of how we deal with the gap of any pull plans that have not been done to date. But we've had a lot of offline conversations. Gene's been part of those as well, to say that we're not satisfied with the level of detail here, and we expect it to be higher in order to be comfortable with this as an exhibit as part of the overall project.
When Gilbane puts this milestone schedule together, there is tons and tons of logic that is involved to come up with these dates. Certain things have to happen for this to happen, and so forth. And that's what we want to see. We want to see the logic behind it, how they got to these dates, and we're gonna hold their feet to the fire on that one.
And to Eric's point, he can't tell me if we're on or off schedule if he doesn't have the details. So he told me to stop asking him.
When you have an interior partition for 218 days, I can't tell you where they're supposed to be in the building at what time. I need more information than 218 days to get something done.
One question I wanted to ask about this, and this is talking extreme hypotheticals, but hypothetically the plan was to finish this project and start the 21-22 school year in a new high school. With the current situation, we don't know what the fall is going to look like or the complete school year. Would Gilbane possibly look at these, because a lot of these I'm sure are contingent about when we are in school and when we are not, about certain things that they can do. I was just curious to see if there's anything that changes if we're not fully occupying or not occupying the high school much at all due to the COVID response. That's just some food for thought.
So you're talking about kind of next school year, Ben, in that example, I think?
Yes, this school year, coming school, the next school year. We're already thinking ahead.
Right.
If we're unable to say, there's restrictions to 40% capacity or less, does that change this timeline at all?
Yeah, I think, and again, hypothetical, I think short of there's no in-school learning and teaching happening in the 2021 season, there's probably not a lot of pickup because everything's really happening in the new facility. Where we do run into timing is we can't start demolition or abatement and demolition of the old facility until the end of the 2021 school year, right?
Correct.
So in theory, if it was, say it's scorched earth and it's decided that there's no in-school session in this upcoming year, could you look at acceleration of demo and abatement and therefore look at acceleration of the front, all the front fields that happen after you take down the building? We certainly could look at that, but I would say right now we definitely haven't contemplated anything like that. But we've talked through kind of, is there any gain? And I think because everything's so much on that kind of east side of the site, then and there's kind of that hard demising line, there's really not a lot of gain in accelerating at least the new construction piece.
I wouldn't go down that route, only because if we were to go out again, say they don't come back or they come back in January, that changes dramatically over the course of the year. If the vaccine comes, they may, put them back in, and I want to have a building to put them back into. I would be very hesitant to go in that route at this point in time.
Totally hypothetical conversation, wasn't it? Just one that I said that, if things turn for the worse and, into the school year, we start talking about a longer term out of the school, then, just was curious if it was something that would impact. It doesn't sound like it would be potentially much benefit to the schedule.
No, I would.
That ties in with the that $1 million COVID allowance a little bit.
Yeah.
We asked Gilbane, and I have not received it yet, a risk analysis on that $1 million. And there's negative risk and there's positive risk. So when they give that risk analysis, we'll be able to see the benefits of the COVID, if there are benefits to the COVID, and the ramifications of it. So, Sam, that is something that has kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit that we need to get.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Ben, it's a good question. And I think it's one that we have to kind of continue to challenge ourselves on. Even if we know, to Kathy's point, that our internal risk analysis of that equation would probably say not worth it. But I think it's kind of, as we see things unfold, do we at least consider different options? And it may never be that you take the existing building offline until the end of the 2021 season. But are there other things that might be able to happen kind of around the periphery? I'm not sure. And I think we then also have to look at kind of, are you doing something out of sequence? Does it actually add cost, or, because you're having somebody mobilize maybe earlier? But good things to think about, right? Because this is going to be very fluid depending on what happens with.
Certainly not an idea that we want to contemplate, but just one that I figured it would be. I'd bring it up in this forum.
Yep. So that's schedule. If we can just go to the last 2 pages, Eric, I just want to go through the alternates. This is Kathy's favorite portion of the.
My favorite portion.
Sam, hang on 1 second. Sorry,
Yes, sir.
don't mean to. And I'm going to admit I did not look through that detailed schedule. I just looked at the date of delivery. That was what I was concerned with. Can we kick back for 1 second to the demo, the current demo date, and then the implementation of the fields?
Yep.
All right, so demo and abatement would go through March of 22.
Yeah.
All right, and softball, soccer, tennis. All right, that schedule right there. That schedule, yes or no, assumes turf implementation and installation of lights. All right, thank you, Eric.
Yes, sir. Yeah. If this was natural grass, you'd be 3 growing seasons after you planted.
That's
18 to 24 months.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and that was always the intent, and the goal was to kind of hit the start of the 22 school year with all the athletics then available for fall sports, basically. Great. Anything else on that, Nate?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right, and then finally, we'll go through the alts. And I've always said my goal is to make sure Kathy gets her greenhouse. So, just a quick summary. And a reminder. So the 155.9 includes alternates 1 and 2. Those were deduct alts, so they were always in the scope, and they were there to be that kind of relief valve if needed to kind of give us the budget. So that accomplishes the synthetic turf in the front, as well as all the lighting in the front.
That does accomplish that.
It does accomplish that, right?
Good. Okay.
So the greenhouse was always an adult. So we have, and the greenhouse has a lot of different trades that kind of span that scope. And Eric, I would say that we're still not perfect on this number on the greenhouse. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct. We'll receive pricing for 27A and 32A by the end of next week, but 21A and 22B are items that we have existing contracts with that wasn't included in their original scope.
Okay. So that 266 number that you see is the roll up on alternate number 3 still has a few of the remaining RTA or the scopes that need to be clarified to populate into that to give us a total number. But I would submit, and I can't tell the building committee what to do, but I would submit that you probably have room for that specific item in the project budget, assuming that we kind of hold fast to where we are. And then we have a variety of alternates that were in some of the other bid packages. So for example, our alternate number 4 was the repaving on Pawtucket Avenue. Eric, that is a deduct alt, so it's actually in the bid. Is that correct?
That is incorrect. It was not included in the bid. It's an add alternate.
Okay. So is that in our number?
It is not, because we were attempting that Joel wrote a letter. We were trying to see if that was a cost that RIDOT was willing to absorb. Okay. But until they made their decision, we put it on hold.
Okay. So that would be an increase to the bottom line of the GMP. Again, we bought it, but it was always going to be an add alt, so we did not take that alt yet when we approved that bid package. So that would be an increase over the number that we have today.
Why would you increase the bottom line and not start using contingency?
You could go either way, Gene. I mean, I think it's probably a little bit of a stylistic. I mean, you've got room to move up to your control budget. So, and you know what the number is.
Yeah. You say tomato, I say tomato.
Exactly. You say tomato, I say potato. And then Eric, just on these remaining, these are all, no, they're not all deducts, right?
No,
some of these are adds,
some are adds.
deducts.
Yep, we have 6 basic categories for this. We have the clock tower. That was a removal of the clock tower and the retaining walls. We had a kitchen equipment add for the halftime building. Currently, it only comes with mechanical rough-in. We had extended warranties. We had service contracts. We have VE options for landscaping, which you don't see right now. And then we have some risk options. An example of the risk option would be like bid package 31C, which is the reuse of existing common borrow at the existing building.
So that would be if we took it, we'd reduce it by 260K, but the 260 is in the number as it stands today.
The 260 is in the number, and it's going to depend on testing of the material once we get to that point, and we don't know how it's going to test. So if it tests non-reusable, then we're going to have to import new material because the on-site material has already been taken off-site.
Okay.
Are we confident that? So I'm going to assume that the number that we see in a couple of weeks is going to look very much like the number we're looking at now with the tweaks that we've discussed. Are we confident under that number that what we're going to see in the way of documentation, owner documentation, is going to be sufficient to operate and maintain the building? And I just asked that question because, that's a key part of why we're doing this, making sure that the folks who are in place to do work on the building can keep it up. And I know that that's a place where, a lot of federal contracts will fall short. Bob talked about FF&E being a casualty of budget overruns. On the federal side, a lot of time it's documentation. So are we confident we're going to get the documentation that we expect at the number that we're looking at here?
Specific to the alternates, Nate, or just in general?
Overall, not just the alternates. And I'm sorry, Sam, to confuse it.
Are you talking like O&Ms?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So they're required to give them prior to any retainage being released.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that'll be vetted by AI3.
Okay.
We beat that up, Nate, just as much as we beat up contingency utilization. And we really hold the closeout of the contract, even if it's in phases, is tied to that level of documentation, the training, the electronic version of all the documents, the fact that the facilities team kind of owns those and understands those by the time they get to their desk. But I think another point that you might not have intended to make was, there are some alts in here for additional years of extended warranty. That may be things that we have some time on, but those are considerations as well, that if you wanted to buy those into the contract, they were included as adults that ownership can review and kind of evaluate. You may say, no, look, we've already got, we've got warranty across the district for all of our mechanical equipment. We don't need to buy it specifically in this project. But those are the kind of things that we wanted to make sure that you had the option to kind of turn those on and off as needed.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely want to have that discussion at the appropriate time, Sam, because we've got probably the resident expertise in place with the building committee to make a smart decision as to the things that we really should consider purchasing and things that we don't need to worry about. So, if that could save us some money down the road.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's weighing the buy-in of it here with the trade contractor versus the value and the relationship maybe that you already have with other vendors that are providing PM services on some of your facilities already.
Another great point.
Sam?
Yes, sir.
With regards to the alternate 3, the greenhouse, 266, if we don't add it to the GMP now and find out later that we've got money, would that become a change order and then be more expensive than the 266?
So we know it'll be higher anyways because we have some of those categories that aren't populated, Manny, but let's just use the 266 as kind of the baseline. If that were the final number, there is a ticking clock on several of these alternates that they are good up into a certain date. And a lot of those were kind of set in July of 2020. So if you said, we're not going to do it right now, we're going to wait, you could go back and do it at a later date. It would be a change order if you decided to do it through the contract. You may see some price increase because the contractor said they were going to hold it until a certain date. You didn't, and that kind of gives them the opportunity to kind of revisit that. So that's kind of the that balancing act of deciding on alts now versus waiting until later. But it's we've all been on projects where somebody declined an alt early, and then based on savings that they had in the contract, months after the deadline, they brought it back in, and the owner said, you know what, I'm gonna reevaluate the price, and I still would like to include it.
So not to beat that one up too much, and Kathy, I know that's one near and dear to your heart, but I mean, if that's one that we're going to consider achieving, that alternate, can we have a discussion about the planned programming for that? I mean, just knowing the old greenhouse space in the old building, that's where my homeroom was, and that basically became storage very, very quickly. It was great when it opened up, but they threw a bunch of junk in it almost immediately.
Well, here's it. Joel Swan and I will get you that information.
Okay.
Okay. He's the head of the science department. Yes. We will. Right, Nicholas? We will.
Nate, just a historical update on that. When that room wasn't originally an art room, that room was originally Future Farmers of America, and that's why they had the greenhouse. And believe it or not, they used to even have animal husbandry, and it was a truly comprehensive program. So when the Future Farmers of America went away, so did the use of the greenhouse. So if we're going to have programmatic access to the greenhouse, then it'll probably be utilized much more than when it was attached to the art department.
Right, and we also want to incorporate special education into that. I saw a great program at Lincoln High School that Joel Swan and I talked about, along with Deb Omerod with that. So I'll get you something, Nate.
Okay.
For the building.
All right.
Absolutely.
In any instance, we're not buying any pigs or goats. There's going to be no animal husbandry going on. All right.
No four-legged creatures.
I don't think that's allowed in the bond, Nate.
I think the goal size.
Hey, Eric, when
Yes,
do we
sir.
know if we can use the on-site belt?
The project documents require it to be tested every 1,000 yards. So it's something that happens throughout the process, Gene.
But when's it done?
So it's reuse of all the on-site. So at some point they're going to have to truck it off once they start scraping the rest of it.
Well, you can,
I'd have to look at Gilbane for
you
a
can
date.
see what my point is.
They gave us till July 1 to make a decision on that.
$260,000 savings there, and the greenhouse is 266. So that was my point.
I think you're trying to connect apples to oranges.
Well, not really.
Come on, Eric.
Bought a lot of apples with oranges.
Gee, Eric. I was going to compliment you, not now.
Eric, now you know how I feel.
It's okay.
He's tough.
No, honestly, in all seriousness, these Monday morning meetings at 8 a.m. are torturous, but very informative. I mean, very busy. And people are truly engaged, honestly. A lot of different opinions. No one really, it's not just rubber stamping anything. I really feel very confident in the team that meets every Monday. I've learned a tremendous amount in regards to this that I never realized from people on that team. And Eric, I can't believe when we ask you something, how quickly you can recall it. It's just amazing the facts that are available to us almost immediately. And of course, Gene has been invaluable, and Joel, he's like a dog with a bone with that money. And I appreciate all that. And Tony Fiola and Craig and I, we really do appreciate that. And also, oh God, I'm drawing a blank here. Steve, I'm sorry, Steve, and his input as far as being an architect. I mean, it really, and I think we mentioned this before, it's really been a valuable team and a very valuable learning experience for me as a superintendent. So I have to say thank you, really. And Sam has handled these meetings so well as being the facilitator. I can't say enough about the overall team, really. And the other members of the building committee should really know that.
Sam's that person that keeps everything cool and calm, and
Correct.
But you hit the nail on the head with Eric. I mean, again, it's like the recall on details. You're like, all right, how did you just,
Yes.
how do you have access to that? But Eric, I do want to say, just to emphasize what Superintendent just said. I think it was you and not Sam that had made a comment to me about the involvement of the team, and when you look across jobs that you guys have worked, and correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say that you said we were probably in the 50 percentile of teams that owners that get this involved and this deep into the weeds on projects. Is that?
It's great to see a team that's so diverse, that's willing to dive in. I mean, I know you and I talk 2 to 3 times a week. Gene and I talk 3+ times a week. It's great to have everyone available. Craig's always available. It's just fantastic that Tony's on site daily. I mean, how great is that? It's having a team that is well-rounded, but also very intelligent and can make decisions with information in front of them. So we're lucky to have a team like this, and to meet every Monday is just fantastic. It's really, it's a great thing.
And I can't say how fortunate. Well, I say it all the time, and I'll say it every day. The residents like Gene and Steve and Manny that basically said, you know what, I didn't run for office. I didn't but I saw an opportunity to contribute my expertise and my background, and Bob Wagon, everyone that says yes, just I will contribute wholeheartedly and not just be a name on a list. I mean, we have active input from so many different professional backgrounds that as a city we are very fortunate. And on behalf of the school committee, I sincerely thank you, and I know that they all feel the same way.
Yep.
So just to kind of close this out, any remaining questions on the draft? And I think what I'd like to do is, give folks another day or two. If you want to submit anything in writing, that's certainly fine as well. If you're still going through the document, again, we know it's a lot to digest. But we're going to try to go through what we heard tonight, as well as the ongoing comments that we've been working with, so that we can really try to get this thing buttoned up. So I think, at a 30,000 foot level, what you'll see is the number will change, even if it's just slightly, because we're going to get these final pieces in. I think we need to work on the COVID clarification, on the backup. I think we need to look at all the alts and ensure that we understand when and what they are, and which ones we need to pull the trigger on sooner rather than later if we're interested. And then just kind of going through the final comments from council and from the leadership team.
If I was to put my finger on one area that I don't have my warm and fuzzy feeling yet, is on all the clarifications and assumptions. And I know Eric and you and your team are going through those to match them up with the actual bids. That's why I was a little dismayed that they weren't just referring to the RTA, rather they put all these clarifications into the GMP. Now there's a task of making sure those clarifications are backed up by the bids.
Well, Gene, most of those clarifications are actually on top of the bid document. So the RTA was executed with clarifications in it. These are clarifications from Gilbane Building Company in regards to those scopes of work. So they're not, the comments were not located in the RTAs. As you questioned us earlier, us doing our research determined that these are on top of the questions that were clarified during the RTA.
Well, I went from not having a warm and fuzzy to having chills. So I'm going to look at those further, unless you tell me you've reviewed them and you're okay with them.
Gene, please look at those further, because that's where I spent most of my time when I was going through them. So certainly your expertise is appreciated in that area.
Well, I have reviewed them and I've passed on comments to Eric, but I'm going to look at it a little.
Yep. We've shared all the comments with Gilbane. There are a few comments that, repeat themselves that we've asked them to revise it. Them excluding any items referenced in the spec but not shown on the drawings, that's not an okay line to have in this. So that shows up a few times. That's going to get crossed out. There are a few other ones that just don't make sense. So we're working through it right now. Tony has all the questions that everyone has supplied us. Nate, Joel, yourself, Gene, all you guys sent us questions, as well as the legal team. So they have all of them. They're working through them.
Okay. When will we see what should be considered the final GMP?
I mean, my goal, Gene, will be that it's, no later than the Thursday before the building committee meeting. So that would be on the That'd be on the 18th, so a week from this coming Thursday.
Is that going to give us enough time in case they haven't made the adjustments that we require?
Yeah, I mean, if they haven't made the adjustments, then we're gonna have to forego the 22nd. But to me, that's not an option right now. We've got to just grind through all this stuff in the next 7 days.
Well, that's why I'm saying it might behoove us to get that a little as soon as possible, the final, what they consider the final.
Yep.
So we can say, yeah, that is the final.
Yep. Yeah. And believe me, we want to get it in your guys' collective hands as soon as possible. So we're certainly not going to delay, but we know we've got a lot of small pieces that have to kind of get nailed down and kind of picked apart still.
Questions regarding assumptions and clarifications. Who should we send them to? Eric or Sam?
You can send them right to Eric. That's fine. If everybody has Eric's email, or if it has to go through Sharon and then to Eric, that's fine as well. Whatever the right protocol is for the building committee meeting. But Eric will gladly take them.
I end up with them anyways.
So say I.
And you guys don't have to, but I don't mind a CC on any of that stuff because I'd love to see the stuff that you're pulling out too.
Should we CC the co-chairs?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah, Joel loves emails.
He does.
Yeah, listen, I love emails that are intended for me. You know, it's when someone's doing a reply all to say thank you. Like I don't need that. You know,
I got 150 bot emails, all the same email today about defunding the police department. I'm like, but.
All right, so let's make sure we all reply all to Joel on something random.
Yes.
Yeah,
Just in closing, one person we didn't acknowledge, a team member, is AI3. I know Jim might be listening, but obviously the design team is very much still part of what we're doing. That they're active on this process every day. They've been reviewing all of this with us, and we wouldn't be here without all their design guidance and leadership. And I think just in general, I think the team should be really pleased with where we sit today, even though we're not quite final on this number. This is great news. This is really a positive thing to be on track, on budget for such a big project. Yes, we've made some concessions along the way to kind of get to where we thought we had to be for the estimates. But this is a win, I think, for the town, for the district, and for the community.
I'm just not blowing smoke here. I said it a couple of months ago. I've been involved in the last count. It was about 150 major projects. This is one of the smoothest so far to date.
And every team member, Gilbane, AI3, they've all been working hard to kind of get us to this point. So we may have discrepancies and conflict along the way, but I think everybody is rowing together on this to keep us moving.
Yeah, no, if I may, Sam, and I say it, and maybe I need to say it more, but even with the issues, like you said, that will come across, which I think are expected, everyone has been professional. Gilbane, AI3, I'd say, in my 8 years on the school committee, I've dealt with some architects. They've changed my opinion of school construction architects for the better. No, but and again, even we hear about, and I speak very very much about any back and forth that happen over things, discussions and disagreements, but it's all professional, and overall the efforts that everyone's putting in. You look at that MWBE piece, we wouldn't be there. Gilbane, jumped in waist deep with, made every effort to prioritize that, that category. So that's just one example of the efforts that everyone's throwing into this. So it's appreciated and should be noted. Anything else? Excuse me.
I have nothing else, Mr. Chair.
All right. Next is consider and vote to approve the invoices. Craig, do you have them in front of you? Do you want to?
Yes, yep. So I will go down the list. So these are the invoices for the month of May 2020. AI3 basic services, $145,414.79. AI3 reimbursable services, May 2020, $3,190. Gilbane Building Company, May 2020, $3,511.53. Peregrine Group LLC, May 2020, $59,000. Filch Engineering, May 2020, $14,186.26. Stephen Turner Inc., May 2020, $6,637.88. And then finally, National Grid, May 2020, $1,242.82, for a grand total for the month of May 2020, $3,235,183.28.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Fiola. Is there a second?
Second.
So that Mr. Vinatero made a second. Without any discussion, all in favor of approving, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, approved. Thanks, folks. And consider and vote to approve the minutes for May 11th, 2020. Have any discussion or questions or motion?
Move to approve.
So Craig, I think with the motion and superintendent with the second, does that work?
Of course, always second.
So,
First
without
thing,
any all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes. Next meeting, as we said, is the 22nd, and we'll all look for the final draft, the end of that week before, hopefully by that Thursday. Sam, when that comes out, just kind of add those notes so that we can go right to the areas that would be different from the draft that we've already kind of gone through.
We'll do a narrative when we send it out, Joel.
Okay, and then we're also going to that topping off beam. I guess, Eric, now is a good time for me to hit on that. So the topping off beam is on site, and obviously with COVID restrictions and safety restrictions, we've got to be cognizant of all of that. What we're looking to do is to have try to schedule building committee, school committee, and the city side of the house for the time to go down with an opportunity with the Sharpie to sign that beam. But more importantly, we're getting to that piece where we get a walkthrough of the building. Escort by Eric. Yes, there's the beam you can see on the screen. So what we are looking at, what I would like to do is to know, thinking if between the building committee, and I'm going to put this out to the school committee, if we could do Tuesday or Wednesday for you to pick one of those days, and to let myself know which day you'll be there, because again, we're restricted by numbers due to COVID, so we want to make sure that we spread it out, but we should be fine between those two groups. And then that will leave Nate, I figure that will leave the city side to grab Thursday, and then if someone can't do Thursday, they can probably trickle back into the Wednesday if you want to take that on. The timing is 3:30 p.m., which is when the trades leave. Construction is done. Safety is maximized, and we'll send out Eric, I'll forward the piece that Eric sent out, but all the PPE requirements, shoes, gloves, glasses, we've got to get a count so that Eric can have and hard hats and so forth as well. So if I missed anything, Eric, please let me know.
Yep, everyone just needs to self-certify for COVID-19. The medic won't be on site at that point, so we'd ask you to please take your temperature and make sure you're under 100.4. Make sure you wear your face covering, as well as all the standard PPE, which is hard hat, safety glasses, gloves, vests, long pants, and safety toe boots. We do have vests, safety glasses, and hard hats on site, but we don't have boots for everyone. We do have some slip-ons, but they tend to be a little bit more awkward.
And this is to sign the beam?
No, this will be for a tour.
So we're gonna sign it at the same time, Gene. So come down and sign, and then if you want to do a tour, then we'll take that tour immediately after. So that's the
Joel, is that this week or next week? What is the date?
This week, Bob.
Could I ask that we could put out some calendar invites for those, especially put on everybody in the council and mayor and stuff on their days and
yeah.
Joel, I'm going to go tomorrow, but we'll see him on there.
Yeah, you're going by yourself.
Yeah.
And
Tony,
and to that point, Bob, if Bob and any other members, if there's a time that's if this doesn't fit into your schedules, the beam is going. Let me back up. The beam itself will be lifted up. It's scheduled to go up Friday morning. So to put your signature on there, then we're looking at doing that this week. The 330 plus is more for the group access, just for safety reasons. But if that is not possible for you, then like Kathy is doing, reach out to Eric and see if you can grab a minute during the day. And Eric, again, if I'm speaking out of turn, then say so. But I believe that a one-off can be done as well.
Yeah, we just don't want. We only want people that are invited to show up. We don't want everyone showing up. Once people start posting this, people are going to realize it's there. It might cause, people to be on site trespassing onto the Gilbane construction site, which is a safety issue in itself. So we've asked for supervision for this. That's why we gave 3 time blocks. We're trying to really stick to those time blocks if possible.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It is in a restricted area, so escort is required. So I'll send an invite out to this group and the school committee, and then Nate, if you want to handle the city side, is that fair?
Yeah. Again, so the time that we're looking for the city side is.
Joel, would you like me to forward him Thursdays?
Yes, please.
Yeah, that'd be great if you wouldn't mind, Eric. Because I'll screw up and have them there on Wednesday or Thursday, July 12th or something stupid like that.
When is the sticker of the students' names going on?
So I will do that tomorrow. So I had they fit them on 2 stickers, a 10-inch by 36-inch stickers of the 2020 graduates. Those names are going to go on there.
They should. Point I was going to make is they should go on before anybody signs it. Yeah. I'll go down, and Eric, I'll give you a call. I'll probably come down a little early just to do that with you.
Roger that.
So that it's in place.
All right, Joel.
Send me a text. I'll meet you down there too.
Okay.
Joel, remember the elected officials from the city. Sharon has that information. If you want to extend, you might as well extend an invitation to them.
Well, that's what Nate's going to do.
Oh, Nate's going to do that. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention there for a minute. And how about to the governor? I'm sorry. I'm not eating my cookie.
The governor, I'll leave that up to you. The governor
you want me to do that?
Yes, please.
All right.
Does the governor include the state delegation to include like Rep. Amore and okay?
Yeah.
That's you, right, Nate?
That's me.
No, that's you.
Who just said?
That would be you. State delegation. I got city council, and mayor.
That's what I asked. Okay, so I'm gonna send out to the state delegation an invitation for 3:30 between 3:30 and 4:30 on Thursday.
Yeah.
We got to be cognizant about numbers, guys. So I hate to be the wet blanket.
Can we get this in an email, like written down, who's expected when? Because I'll screw it up.
Okay, yeah, me too.
Well-
Oh, yeah.
Could you also add in that email, for those of us that are coming from, that haven't had access to the site, where do we get access? My access has been more visual from the perimeter of the
The
site.
CTC.
CTC?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you pull into the CTC parking lot, it'll drain you right down to the gate.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just so I understand this, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, there were going to be open slots for certain people to sign it. Friday morning, the beam is actually being lifted. Is there some type of
Correct.
thing going on for that?
No.
There will be there's a viewing site off, like, you can stand off basically in the public parking lot of the CTC.
This isn't for me. I've seen plenty of beams go up. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's not going to be anything worth coming down to and seeing. It's more for and as it was explained to me very well by Eric. I mean, this is, and as well as I do, Gene, right? This is much more for the steel workers, ceremony. For us, the signature is a courtesy extension, but that actual raising is kind of their celebration.
Well, was lunch provided on?
No.
What's that?
All right, hold on. We gotta
I'll
watch.
take you to Subway.
We gotta watch the numbers. So tomorrow is Tuesday. So you want everybody, even the elected officials, to show up on Thursday?
So
That would be a problem.
We have a cap of 15, including Eric, to do the tour.
Right.
So and this is not for family. This is not, we're not bringing spouses, we're not bringing kids. No, but it has to be clear. We're not bringing our best friend. We're not bringing our largest donor, or campaign manager. This is for if you were on a ballot and succeeded, or if you were chosen as part of this committee doing the work.
Right.
Then
Invite only.
right.
Wait,
But when do you want them to show up so that you don't have more than 15 there, Joel? I think we have to.
So they have to respond. So they're going to have to respond to that email invitation, right? I mean, they're going to get, at least on the school, the building committee, school committee, and the city side, they're getting the invite.
More than 15 right there.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
maybe
You
we
want
should.
to do it 2 nights?
Well, no, Kathy, it's not all together.
All
I'm just
together.
saying those are. Yeah. No. So
Thursday night, it's the city council
Thursday city.
and the state delegation. So it'd be the 5 city councilors, the mayor is 6, and
Right.
the delegation. Now, just
Right.
if someone couldn't make it, we could move it around. The building committee is tomorrow night, and the school committee for Wednesday night, just in case somebody needed to move it around.
Oh, we're talking this week. I thought we were talking next week.
Oh, no.
No,
this
this
week.
week.
Oh,
Problem. So when do you want the city delegation to show up, Tony?
Thursday.
Like Thursday?
Why are
Thursday
you?
is-
Okay.
That would be the state.
I'll have them respond to Sharon directly by Wednesday.
Why are you worried about the city, Kathy? Nate was doing the city.
I mean, Greg Amori, Bill
That's
Con,
the state.
doing those?
That's
No,
state.
state.
That's
I'm
the
sorry.
state. So yeah.
I'm saying city, state. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not doing what Nate's doing. And the governor.
Sam, we need your columnist to come in here and level this out. Will you please?
I'm gonna go up on the beam. You're gonna be stuck.
yeah. We're gonna pull the ladder away.
And just a note is, weather permitting, we plan to fly the drone with the beam going up, so we'll post a video of it so everyone can see it after.
Right,
Could
perfect.
you also be there during those times so that we can have a visual of people signing it as well? You are out.
What I said about that is if people want to be videotaped signing it, if there's, if you have someone with you, they just tape it with their phone, so we're not adding another person for videographing during all of these different slots. Because I think we're limited to 15, right, Eric?
Yeah, but
State law right now is 15.
Yeah, but you're not going to go on the tour. You're just going to watch the people sign. We'd like to have a visual of it.
All right, I'll see if we can get someone there for tomorrow through Thursday. Okay.
Yes.
All right, but regardless, we're at 3:30, and how do we handle the situation? We're inevitably going to get back. Or I don't have steel-toe boots, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. I know, Eric, you mentioned the slip-ons. They're not great, but we're probably going to have to rely on them for much of the city council, to include me, because I don't have steel toes.
Or reinforced toe, but yes, we understand that. We'll also have Carlos Neves there from Gilbane Building Company. He'll give you a quick safety rundown, and if someone doesn't qualify with the standard requirements, we can do a person-by-person risk analysis that Carlos will be able to perform.
Okay.
Yeah, we can definitely handle those on a case-by-case offline. All right, any other questions? So we've got the 22nd for our next meeting.
And Nate,
Yeah.
that is only a requirement if they're taking the tour, correct? The beam is inside the.
That is correct.
Correct. No, the beam's already up, Gene. We got to go up. Yes, that is it, but it's worth repeating. That is only for the tour. If you have, if you do not wish to climb stairs and walk through that site, then you can. It's not so critical.
And even though there aren't construction personnel on site, there are still safety risks. So I just want everyone to be aware that it is a construction site that is mandated by OSHA, that we need to follow all of the rules, whether people are working or not.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll bounce the city folks out of there for you, Eric, if they get up to shenanigans. Don't worry. I'll take care.
I'm not afraid to ask people to leave, Nate. I've done it before.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Gene. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Folks, thanks again. Just